I'm Will.
And I'm Steven.
And this is the Post-P Chronicles. So, Steven, what do we have going on today?
We got a pretty cool guest, as you know, episode 1, season 2. We brought out the superstar all the way from Arizona. We got JC. What's going on, JC?
Welcome.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Welcome. Thank you for coming through, man. Definitely.
So, JC, tell us your story. Where did it start? What's going on?
Oh man, it's been a crazy ride, life, you know. I mean, I look back now and think about just, you know, I grew up in Chicago, but now I'm in Arizona, and I really been like really all over the place. So it's been a crazy ride, man.
So tell us about your childhood growing up in Chicago. How did that go?
It was rough, man. You know, I don't think people know how severe it is when damage children. You know, I was molested at a very young age, and just tortured. A lot of bad stuff done to me. Drownings, you know, being locked in rooms, and it really just kind of messed me up. It messed me up, and as I grew up, all I knew was pretty much violence. It's what we did on the streets, and you know, I fit in perfect with, you know, what older gang member doesn't like a broken kid, you know. I was out there just doing crazy stuff for older guys and just, you know, looking for love on the streets, and that's what I was drawn to. You know, I wanted to be a gangster so people could love me and respect me, and I guess at the same time fear me.
So, JC, I got a question. So you said that you had a rough childhood, to say the least. So what was your household like? Did you have your dad there? Did you have both parents, or were you in foster care back and forth? The reason I ask this is because, you know, a lot of people go through this, and a lot of people think that they're alone in this, you know, and it's important to know where we came from that led us to where we went, you know. So what was your household like?
My parents got married really young. They were like 14 when they got married. So when they came to the United States, they were young. So my dad, you know, he fell in love with the drugs, the women, you know, just that whole culture, because we came from a small town in Mexico.
Right.
And you know, he ended up running to California. My mom chased after him, and I still remember it was like a really long like train ride from Chicago all the way to California. And I remember just little parts of my mom just going over there to, you know, hunt him down pretty much. And we found him, but he was already, you know, with someone else and everything. So my mom was kind of left to fend for herself. And she had a brother that lived out there in Sacramento. And he's the one that, you know, took us in, but it came at that cost. You know, he was a very sick individual, and he's the one that did all that stuff, you know, to me, and
right.
And it did something to me at a really young age where it created like a little monster in me where sex was like my first language, pretty much.
Right.
Violence was like my second, and then it got worse and worse because as I grew up, I started seeing more violence because I was involved in violence, and it created like a monster, man.
Now, JC, I got a question. You said sex was your first language. I've noticed when a lot of people suffer childhood molestation or childhood sexual abuse, that choice of sex is robbed from them, and their innocence is robbed from them. So they're just kind of like, screw it. It is what it is. And a lot of people can become hypersexual and then violent. Do you feel that was one of the cases or reasons you became that way?
Well, yeah, bro. I mean, it was like I pretty much was never able to be a kid. You know, and it turned into like addiction because I started, masturbating at a really young age, like constantly. It turned into almost to like a sickness, to tell you the truth, because after that, I was confused. I was like, well, do I like men or do I like women? So then I started sleeping with more women to prove to myself that I wasn't like that. And it created like a monster, bro. Like I said, it did something to me.
Uh, did you ever have anybody that you can reach out to? Because as a kid, this is a lot to deal with as an adult, but you're a child at this time. So was there anyone that you was able to reach out to and share some of the things that you were going through?
Well, I didn't really open up about it until I was about 16, and I was already kind of damaged from being on the streets.
Right.
And I had like a nervous breakdown. My whole right side of my body shut down. My uncle had to take me to like the emergency room, and I started seeing a psychiatrist and counselor, and they tried to put me on meds, but I didn't like how they made me feel. And I kind of pushed through it, but then I ended up back on the streets, and I just kept feeding the monster, man.
That's what I was going to ask. So you're 16, getting help, going to a psychologist or counselor, you're getting therapy, but obviously it wasn't enough. And obviously you went back to the streets. Why did you go back to the streets? What do you think it was?
I mean, sometimes I sit here and I wonder, I want to blame, I want to blame my dad. I want to blame my mom. I want to blame my grandparents. I want to blame my whole family sometimes, because no one could deal with me, because, in Mexican culture, you really don't talk about that.
Right.
You don't say that, your uncle molested you. You know what I mean? It's just, and especially being a male.
It's like the machismo, right? You can't say anything's wrong with you.
You must did something. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. So like, they didn't know how to deal with me. And yeah, I was out of control. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Like I think back and I'm like, wow, I was doing all that, at a young age. I mean, what kid at 9, 10 years old works, all summer cutting grass just to save up to buy a gun?
Right.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it was to like, inflict fear on people, protect myself. I was already running like a scared kid because of everything that had happened to me.
Right.
And then, living in those neighborhoods that were gang infested, it's like, if you don't choose a side, you're getting bullied by both. So
you had no choice.
I had no choice. So like, and as a kid, it was a little harder for me because I got moved around so much from different areas of Chicago that there was a different gang everywhere I went. So I really couldn't zero in with one. So I learned the chameleon with all of them. Mm. And it was like my survival skill. I always had a pistol on me, but I blended in with everybody. Like, I was a guest boy. I was a KGB. I was a 2-6. I was an SD. I was Land King. Like I blended in with everybody because that's what I had to do to survive, or else I would have got killed at a really young age.
So, what it sounds like to me is you were going through so much trauma as a child, so much trauma, and what the street life and gang mentality and everything that it fosters is negativity, violence, and everything that you were going through, you needed that outlet. So it was easy to go to the street because you needed that outlet because you didn't have anybody to talk to. Like you said, in Mexican culture, Hispanic culture, even, just minority culture in general, you don't talk about certain things, unfortunately. We can end that because we know that there's power in talking about what you're going through.
Sure.
But that's not always the case for everybody else. So you're going through all these different things. You're committing crimes, you're committing violence, and you're getting love from your friends, your homies, all the girls. But obviously you end up getting locked up. So what was the first time that you went to jail? And what was it for?
Man, I've been to jail so many times.
He said the first time. I don't even remember.
First time. That was a lifetime ago.
I was trying to collect my records at one time, and I was having so much trouble because I had to do that for that the show that they did up on National Geographic on me. I had to collect all the like legal paperwork of where I was in prison and stuff like that for them.
Right.
And man, I was having such a hard time. It's like I have like 4 gun cases in Chicago. I think like 58 overnights. It was just like it was crazy because it was just like in and out of jail, in and out of jail. And then I was like, how do I get locked up for a gun in Chicago, right? And supposedly the strictest gun laws, but they let me out on the I bond, and I just get out again. So I mean, I'm back out with another gun again. It's like it was just, and I started trying to write everything down, but I mean, my first time that I went to prison had to be overnight, man, because that's how I started.
Right.
I started slowly graduating into like bigger crimes.
So let's talk about those bigger crimes. What was the first time you got a significant amount of time? No overnights, no turnarounds, no iBots, anything like that. The first time you got sentenced to a significant amount of time.
It was for unlawful use, possession of a weapon, unlawful use of a weapon, discharge of a weapon. I started shooting into a car, and I didn't notice that the cops were right behind me. So, I started running, but they caught me, and I got sent to county. Started fighting the case. They ended up giving me 2 years because it was my first like real violent case.
2 years. So what was your mentality that first time actually serving time? Because you were pretty far gone at that time.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I went in there. I exercised. I met with more criminals. I came out in better shape, thinking what I'm gonna do even bigger now. Mm-hmm. And I hit the streets. I was right on the streets the next day I was out. It's almost like a criminal school you go to, and you graduate and you get out and come out a little bit more dangerous.
Yeah, I hear that a lot with like lower offenses, like because they always talk about the recidivism rate, and the recidivism rate is the rate at which people go back to prison. Mm-hmm.
75% in the United States.
But the reality of it is, what they don't talk about is that high percentage is people who are doing low-level time, low-level offenses. So when you're on level 1 or level 2, they come back, like he said, 2 years with halftime or something like that. So you're about to go home soon. So you meeting more criminals. You like, I'm getting out better than I was before. I'm working out. I'm,
Good luck catching me next time.
Exactly. But the people who sit down for a significant amount of time, that recidivism rate is much lower.
So JC, where are we going after? As soon as you get those 2 years up, you're obviously going through your mind, I'm going to do bigger and better. What's bigger and better look like for you? What are you involved with?
I caught another shooting case like a week later after that. And right before I was supposed to turn myself in for that case, is when I got like my first job for the family in Mexico to go do my thing, go pick up the drugs, bring them to Chicago. So before that case could even hit the ground or anything, I left the country pretty much.
So for a lot of people don't know, so JC spent time drug running, right? Basically from Mexico to Chicago, or Mexico to Chicago back and forth, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I was on the streets, and I had friends on the streets. People knew me, and Valerie ended up giving me a job. Valerie's, if people follow the story, is one of the twins' wife, Cato's ex-wife. Cato was best friends with DMX. She knew me. She was always like a big sister to me, always looked out for me because I was always on the street. So she offered me a job, and that's when I got my first, I put in my first application to the cartel pretty much.
So I imagine at this point, you're not really making much money out of prison, and this is your first time you're making real money. How does that feel? Was the plan just do a quick back and forth jobs, or was it like, this is my new lifestyle. I'm gonna be doing this until my luck runs out?
You know, I was so broke, bro, that like, and I was living on the streets pretty much, from house to house and just, gang banging and just doing dirt and just broke. And I went on my.
Talking to the mic for us, bro.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. And I was broke. So then when I came back from that trip, I thought I was balling. I thought I was like rich. I thought I was gonna retire for the rest of my life. I mean, I had 12,000. It's the most I've ever seen.
First trip, 12,000.
I was. I want to say I was still 16 my first trip before when I started. And I was like, man, I'm rich. And I went and I bought me like some new Dickies and stuff like that. And Valerie came up to me and she's like, "Oh no, you're not like hood rich. You're gonna be rich." And she stuck it in my head. So like, she went and took me and bought me, Jabot. She taught me how to shop. And I started buying that name brand stuff, Gucci, my like gold chains, and my whole head kind of, I guess you could say, I started to change how I was thinking, because now I wanted money.
Right.
I wanted money and I wanted to make it.
Yeah, you wanted more for yourself. You wasn't buying Dickies, and Converse and Chucks no more.
Yeah.
He's going to get Gucci, Jabot jeans.
Yeah, all that stuff. And that stuff wasn't cheap. So as soon as my money started to run out, I was like, well, this is going to be like a full-time job then that I need to do.
At 16 years old.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, so let's go. And then I just kept, coming back and forth. But I started making more the more often I went, because I started getting closer with the family and in Chicago, the family in Mexico, and I guess you could say I have like a gift where people tend to like me.
Right.
And they started giving me more jobs, more money, and I started just kind of falling in love with the whole idea of me being like a drug trafficker, narco.
So now we've interviewed people a couple times now that have also done drug trafficking. Mm-hmm. and unfortunately their luck runs out, right? So how often were you going back and forth from Chicago to Mexico, and when did your luck run out?
I mean, I was back and forth, and I want to say on my seventh trip is when my luck ran out. I was already like really into drugs now. I was doing a lot of coke now. They were letting me into the nightclubs in Chicago, so I felt like I just felt like a gangster, So like my whole life started to change. I like I said, the drugs, the women, being that young and being in nightclubs like that, made my head get even bigger. And it created a monster, bro.
So what happened when they caught you on that seventh trip, and what was the consequences?
Well, I ended up getting sent to what I call real prison. It was prison in Mexico. And
real prison.
Yeah. I mean, prison is prison. I mean, the cage could be made out of gold, but it's still a cage, It's
definitely a cage. That's hard time right there.
But it was just rough over there because it's just a different vibe over there, I grew up in Mexico, so I kind of know it's a little rough over there. It's different, and it's just you want to talk about machismo, like it's at 1,000%. The violence, everything it's normal to be violent over there.
You almost have to be violent to survive, right?
Yeah, if not, they'll eat you alive. I mean, I remember I was just telling one of my friends, we were talking earlier. He's from Mexico, and I was telling him, man, I remember when I was like 13 years old, and I was in my little town in Mexico, and we were like flying on these little scooters because everybody drives scooters over there where I'm from, and the cops got us. and they pulled us over. And then we were young, right? And I started mousing off to him, and he smacked me so hard in the face. Like, I was telling my buddy, like, I even forgot what I was saying. and and that's just how it is over there. That's it, like you can't go complain to nobody. You know, there's nobody to complain. They're gonna beat the crap out of you. So it's just a different vibe over there.
Man.
Very violent.
So let me ask you this: your first stint in California, I mean not California, but in the United States, you said that made you come out even better. You worked out and you was like, I'm coming out a better criminal. Now your stint in Mexico, more machismo, you like, this is a lot more serious, different time. How did you come out of that situation? What was your mentality coming out of there?
Honestly, it almost broke me. It almost broke me because of the other drug addiction that I picked up there. Um, at the end, I was, I was in fear. I keep it real with people. I tell them, I'm not pretending to be no tough guy, man. I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid because I had people that wanted me dead, and there was nowhere to run.
In the prison.
And at least in the United States, you could PC up and that's it. You're gone. You're in the hole, stuff like that. Over there, that doesn't exist.
Mm.
So, being in constant fear and then, being a drug addict, because I started smoking crack while I was there. And
in prison, you were smoking crack?
Yeah, it was like the thing to do there. In Mexican prison, it's like, if you want to get an idea of how it was, I always tell people, watch the movie Get the Gringo with Mel Gibson,
mm-hmm.
and you'll get an idea what Mexican prison is over there. Because, on Sundays and Thursdays, it was visiting day, and all the families would come into the prison, and the prison would turn into like a little town. All the women would be in there, the children would be in there, guys would be having sex with their wives in their cells. They would be eating at restaurants. We'd have live music, soccer games. It was nice. I'm not gonna lie.
And then there was the flip side, right? I believe I heard you talking about how when you're in Mexican prison, like there's levels, and depending on who you know, is what level you can be in inside that prison. Correct?
Well, yeah. If you don't have money, you're gonna be at the poorest level in the prison. If you're decent, they have mid class, they have high class, and they have really low class.
Just like in society.
So it is what it is, and it's just you see some really poor people in there, man. There's some people in there that really don't have nothing, man. They just live on day-to-day basis.
Where'd you fall into that?
Man, I came in as like a rich guy and ended up living with the poorest of the poorest, man. And it was I always tell people that if I wouldn't have been young and in the prime of my violence, I would have never been able to survive that prison.
So you're in Mexican prison. How do you get to out? Well, how many years were you sentenced to in Mexican prison?
They gave me 15 years.
Wow.
So you didn't obviously do the whole time. How did you get out, and what came about with that process?
The American government had a program where they were exchanging inmates with Mexico, American inmates for Mexican inmates. And it was it was a program, It took them a while to get me because I was one of the last ones that pretty much got out on the plane. It was about, I want to say about maybe 50 or something close like that. They picked up, and that was it. I got sent back to the United States.
After how many years?
I was over there for 4.
Wow.
Once you came back to the States, did you have to do any more time in the States, or they just let you go?
Well, they let me go. When I got to La Tuna Federal Prison, they brought us into a room, and they started showing us movies about, vets that came back from Vietnam, And I don't remember them still. I don't even remember them calling it PTSD back then. I just remember them saying that a lot of these people that experience trauma, were having a lot of issues now. And I knew my criminal headlight lit up right away. And I was like, because I don't know how to read and write, but I know how to be a criminal. So I was like, they're saying something. So I raised my hand and I started crying and I played it off. I'm not gonna sit here and lie, and I was like, if I'm gonna get some good time off of this, I'm gonna get it. And they brought me into the room and I ended up getting time for pain and suffering. So every day that I did in Mexico counted as 2, and then I got some good time. And I'll never forget the day that I was at work, because I had already got into my routine of being in the prison, and I was at work working in the kitchen, and they called me, and I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Roll up." I was like, "Roll up?" I was like, "Roll up what?" And he's like, "You're going home." And I was like, "Get out of here." I didn't have a date or nothing, you know what I mean? So I was like, he's messing with me. And he's like, "You're leaving. Your papers just came in." And I was like, wow. I was like, man, I went up to him and I was like, "Well, let's go." And he's like, "You don't want to go get your stuff?" And I was like, "No, I'm going home. What do I want my stuff for?" And yeah, they took me out to the bullpen. I got undressed. They gave me, some clothes to wear. And I start walking out the gate and I see these 2 cowboys, like, Texas Rangers.
Right.
And I come up to the gate and I'm thinking they're going to drive me to wherever I'm going, And they're like, Julio Almanza. And I was like, yeah. They were like, "You're under arrest."
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, "For what?" And it was for the shooting in Chicago.
Oh, thought it was over.
So I was like, wow. I was like, minutes. And they put me in the truck. They dropped me off at the El Paso County Prison, downtown El Paso. And there I had to learn to blend in with the guys from El Paso. Really good people, man. Really good people. They treated me with a lot of love and respect. I got a lot of love for El Paso.
So did you ever even get out of the prison gates before the Rangers got you?
No. As soon as they were, you know how they have the first gate where they release you, you walk down.
Right.
And there's a gate. There's a middle gate before you go out to the real world. They were in the middle. So I didn't even really get to even step out without cuffs.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier, because you said PTSD. And you said that you kind of played the role in order to get the time off, but with the ability of hindsight, everything that you did go through as a child, everything that you went through in that prison, don't you think there was some PTSD attached to that? Something that we don't talk about, but your struggles, your trauma, when you experience a lot of trauma for one person at such a young age, have you ever thought about that now? Like, man, I did go through a lot of PTSD. I did have a lot of, untreated trauma.
I didn't know how bad I was until I moved in with my wife. When my wife moved in, when I moved in with my wife and we got together, I started to understand how really damaged I was, and like how much people I had damaged throughout my life. Because of what was done to me. Like I was bleeding on everybody.
Right.
And, that's why I give her props, man, because my longest relationships were pretty much like 3 months. Girls would like get to know how crazy I was, and they would move out the state. They would change their numbers.
I don't
want to
be anywhere
passports.
near you.
Because I was a nice guy. I was a nice guy, but it was like
you got triggered.
What do they call it? Dr. Hyde.
Dr. Jekyll and
Hyde.
Mr. Hyde. Yeah.
Yeah, like it would flip. Right, baby?
But that's like the definition of hurt people.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is healed people heal people. So let's go to You got out of this prison. You got right back in for the shooting in Chicago. What happened with that case?
Well, it's a story. Just the story in El Paso, bro, is the story itself because, like, I sat there in El Paso for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sign a paper when you get there that if Chicago doesn't come and get you in 30 days, and these are working days, so Saturdays and Sundays don't count.
Right.
They have to release you. And I sat there. I even got a job. I got right back into my routine. I started hanging out with other criminals, getting cigarettes, working, outside on the chain gang. On the 30th day, I was like, well, I guess they're not coming to get me, right? And
oh no,
they call me, and they're like, "Oh, Manza, you're getting moved tomorrow to the annex prison." The annex prison is a prison in El Paso, but it's like more high end. It's in the desert, in the ground. So I'm like, man. I was like, here I thought, that I was gonna be back in Chicago, whatever, blah blah blah, and they're moving me, and I'm like, are you sure they're not coming to get me? And they're like, yeah, they probably are because they're moving you over there, so they're gonna pick you up from over there. So they moved me. The next day, these guys released me in the middle of the desert.
Oh wow!
In the middle of the desert, and I didn't even know where I was.
Just like that, huh?
Like, it's crazy. I tell people the story. Like, they opened the gate, they let me out. Like, and I looked, I left, I looked to the right. And you know how when it's really hot, like, you see like a mirage almost?
Right. And
I remember, I'm like, man, my life has been a trip. I was like, so I walk up to the highway, and I don't see nothing. Like, I don't see no cities. I don't see, like, no buildings. I don't see nothing. So I walk back to the gate and I knock on the door, and the guard opens, and he's like, if you don't leave the premises, I'm going to arrest you, and you're going to be back in for 72 hours. So I was like, man. So I just started walking straight, wherever.
They didn't tell you where to go. They just like go.
Yeah, just like that, man. And I'm not like making it up. That's how rude, he was.
Wow.
And next thing I know, I see these lowriders pulling in, and I've never seen cholos up close. Like, gang members are different in Chicago from like California and everywhere else. You know what I mean? So, I was a little like scared because like they just look different, and so I go up to the car and I'm like, hey, can you guys give me like a ride or something? And they're like, where you going? And I was like, I'm not from here, man. So I need to get to the city so I can make a call. And they're like, yeah, jump in. So I jump in, and all these fools are in the car and everything, and they're with their girlfriends, and some of them in the back start like, hitting themselves with the needle. And I'm like, man, they're gonna kill me. I was like, why do I always put myself in situations like this? You know what I mean? Like, but they ended up taking me to the Western Union, man, and I got some money sent. I was like, hey, I'm gonna buy you some beers for helping me out. And the homie was like, nah, it's all good. And he's like, just come to the house. We're gonna have a carne asada because my dad knows that I got out. Mm-hmm. So I ended up at these guys' houses, man, and I was supposed to jump on the first bus as soon as I got out in the morning and like turn myself in Chicago. Oh. It's nighttime. I'm drunk. I'm about to marry this homie's sister. I caught my senses, and I was like, I gotta go, man. And they took me to the Greyhound station, and it was like my family saying bye to me, man. They were putting beers in my jacket. It was, I wish I could see them again one day. So, it was nice. Right. It was nice.
So you're turning yourself
I'm on the bus.
So you turn yourself back into Chicago. Do you end up turning yourself in Chicago?
Yeah, I get on the bus, I get to Chicago, and I turn myself in right away, and it made me look good with the judge because the judge was like, the case that I was on was a pretty bad case,
Right.
and I was looking at a lot of time. Um, they used to have a gang program in Chicago. They made a movie about it called First Time Felon, and it was a program for gang members where you know you could do 6 months if they gave you 7 years,
What?
but
That's a good deal.
you had to graduate from the program, and it was like a military based program, buzz heads, shiny boots, all that stuff. And she ended up giving me the program. The judge was really cool, man. Like, one thing I gotta say, man, God has always been like my guardian angel must have like broken wings. He's been stabbed a bunch of times. Like, he's
Take some shots.
he
He
probably
done
needs
been
to
through it.
retire already.
He been through it.
You probably got a new one already.
But like, yeah, man, I've always had luck with the judges, man. They see my background, they see what I've been through, and they just, I guess, they feel for me, And she gave me the program. I remember to this day because uh she told me, she's like, I hope you get out and change your life, and man,
So
I had a lot of chances, man. I was really damaged, man.
so how old are you at this point, JC?
I don't even remember, man.
Sound like about
You
20.
like early 20s still?
I try to do the math sometimes, man, and I tell my wife, I don't know if it's the drugs, I don't know if it was the beatings, I don't know if it was like everything that I've been through, but like sometimes I can't make sense. And she's like, because everything was so fast, it was back to back, babe. Like it didn't happen in a long period of time. It was just back to back. So I want to say in my mid-20s, bro.
Mid-20s? Okay. So you turn yourself in, you get 6 months. How's boot camp looking for you?
Oh man, it's like the worst place to go. Like, they send you to a place that's infested with gang members and everybody's gang banging. Like, it was like a scene from Colors, just Chicago style. There was every kind of gang member there that you could possibly think of. And I ended up meeting this guy. He was a dragon from the South Side, and I forgot his name, but I've talked about him before. And he was good with his hands, so he was picking up everybody. So I made him my friend.
Smart man.
I've always been a smart criminal when it comes to keeping myself safe.
Right.
And I just befriended him. We became really good friends, and I was always his lookout because he was always fighting. And we both got in trouble. We ended up getting sent to the pen, and we got sent to the same prison. But for some reason, the system was so packed that year that on Christmas they released both of us.
Wow.
Before even the 6 months.
Jeez.
So on Christmas, on the 24th, they just call us. They're like, hey, pack up your stuff, you're leaving. And the dragon, the dude was like, for real? And I started grabbing my stuff because at this point, I just want to get home. Like, I believe everybody is telling me. It's like, it's time to go. So I grabbed my stuff, and yeah, we get released. We end up coming home. And I was back on the streets right away. My homie that got out with me, he got killed like a couple of days later.
Wow.
Right in front of his house.
So you said you went home. What's home for you? Do you still have your mom to go to, or where are you going?
Oh, no. When I say home, I say
Chicago.
59. It was 59 in Spalding in Chicago, the South Side.
Got it.
So you're going home. You've been through one prison after another,
Two
one
different
experience
countries.
after another, all different countries. Did it so much. What is going through your mind now? Like, man, I don't want to go back to jail. Are you even thinking that? Or are you like, man, I got to get to the money? Like, what is your mindset at this time?
Honestly, bro, I wasn't even looking that far ahead. I was just, I guess, living day by day because I was on the streets again. I didn't have nothing. Um, I was back to my old, old self, um, robbing people, trying to get money, selling drugs, hanging out with the bigger guys. I always had the luck of hanging out with the older guys that had the money, so I could have, food to eat. So I was always there watching their back, but they fed me, take care of me, and gave me clothes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I always kind of had that, but it's almost like those people always want to keep you like that. They want to keep
To
you
keep you
broke,
down.
so like you
Yeah.
could always, be there for them and cop cases because, there was times where the older guys got pulled over and, or we got raided and I took the rap. That we got raided once at a big dope house that we had, and I took the rap from my leader, and he didn't even get me out. Someone else got me out. But I was just like that. I was just very loyal, very. I just wasn't afraid. I always call it self-suicide, man. I just didn't care if I lived or die, really, to tell you the truth. And then I got so used to being in prison that I was just
Numb to it.
I want to say that I was happier there than I was out here.
Yeah. That's not the first time I've heard that. I'm pretty sure you've
Yeah,
heard that
definitely.
before too. So my question is, looking back, because the reason we do a lot of this is because somebody is going through the things that we went through, and hearing these stories, hearing your story, and seeing the other side of it gives them hope that they can get through it. So, looking back at yourself at that time, do you think that there was anything someone could have told you or given you that would have brought you up out of there? Or do you think that's just something that you had to go through? Like your mind was so gone, anything anyone would have told you to help you, you wouldn't have heard it. You wouldn't have been receptive to it at that time. What do you think?
Well, what makes somebody crazier is when they don't know that they're crazy.
Right. Right.
So, like, I didn't know. I thought everybody else was crazy. And, hey, you give me something? Give me some coffee? Sorry.
No, you good, man.
I thought everybody else was crazy, and that's when my wife was like, no, it's you. It's not everybody else. Like, and we could get to that later, but, in the process, like, my wife went through a lot to be able to show me how far gone I was.
Right.
Sounds like she's been by your side through a lot of this.
Only one.
Yeah.
Only one. Man, she wrote it out with me with like a G, and I'm going to keep it real. Like, I kind of damaged her in the process because, she got hurt, stuff, you can only take so much. And I had to make that change. That's why, I turned my life over and all that stuff, because like, I wasn't going to lose this person because now I knew what love was. Like, she showed me what true love was. Like, she knew everything about me before she even married me. She knew how damaged I was. She knew what they've done to me, what I had done. And she never judged me. So I was like, man, I better grab my nuts and like really like sit down and like I wanted to change. I've been wanting to change my whole life, bro. I just didn't know how.
Right.
So was she the catalyst to your change, or it was part of the process? Now let's talk about the change. Obviously, you're known as wrong to strong, right? So let's talk about how'd you get to the change and then to strong. What's going on, or what happened?
Well, when I got out the first time in 2013, 14, I came out with the mentality that I was going to change and I was going to be the best fitness trainer. I was really into fitness because my dad, I had always been in the gym as a kid, and it was something that it's the only thing my dad taught me, I always say. And that's what I was going to do for a career. I wanted to change. I wanted to stay out. But honestly, I didn't know how. I came out. I got into a relationship right away. I hurt her. I got into another one, and I was just bouncing from house to house. Finally, I started using drugs. I started getting on steroids, um, and it turned into this whole like addiction again. Even though I thought I was a good guy because I wasn't killing people or selling drugs, you know, but I was doing all this bad stuff over here. I was being a criminal.
So,
I was just justifying my crime was less than the other one.
so the monster was still there, it just took on a different form.
Yes, exactly. And I always tell people, the fitness world, believe it or not, it's a very dark world because there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of skin, there's a lot of there's a lot of everything.
Yeah.
And
we know.
Combine that with old guys and new guys and young guys, and it's a monster itself.
A lot of broken people, they start working out because they're broken and they don't have to.
Exactly.
They don't want to face their problems, so they just want to mask it with training.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a dark world, and it's funny because it's so glorified. Oh, someone's in shape. They got their life together, and often that is not the case.
And that is not the case.
As a trainer.
But that's one thing that you can control.
Huh?
I said, but that's just one thing that they can control.
Yeah.
So it may look like they have their life together, but really everything else is just out of control.
It's like how they call it in AA, man. Like a lot of people turn into dry drunks. They're not drinking alcohol no more, but the same stuff that they were doing while they were alcoholics, they're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They're still sleeping around. They're still lying to people. Borrowing money without they're still doing the same behaviors.
So your hormones are all over the place. You're damaging women. You're still a criminal, but not to the extent of shootings and murderings. What's the next step? You want to change, but you don't know how. How do you change?
My PO got sick of me, and he ended up sending me back to prison. And I got sent to one of the most dangerous prisons here in California. It's called Victorville. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget the day, how big that gate was, how it sounded, how it felt when I got off the bus. They had, as soon as we walked in, they were already they had stabbed somebody in the kitchen, for a piece of chicken. These places are really bad. You could smell the death. You could feel the energy. So I'm back in this prison, and honestly, I'm like, man, what am I doing? What am I doing back again? Like you're 40 years old, dude. Like what? Like I couldn't believe it, because I in my mind, I had really tried, but I was lying to myself. Mm. And there was nobody from my team there, so it was rough. The only thing that saved me is that a guard looked at my tattoo on my leg, because I have a big 5% tattoo on my legs. Mm. And he's like, "You're a 5%er?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a sponsored athlete, by the way." And he's like, "Get out of here."
This is 5% nutrition, then, right?
No, I think this is what the Nation of Gods and Earths 5%, or
which 5% are we talking about?
Rich Piana.
Yeah, the supplement company 5%.
I think he's talking about.
Yeah, that's why my head was so big in the fitness world, because I was like, part of 5%. I was big, I was strong, but I was broken, man. I was broken, and I was damaging a lot of people.
So the guard points out your 5% tattoo. You said you're a sponsored athlete in the fitness industry. How does that lead to change?
He's like, whatever. And he was a big dude, so I could tell he lifts, so he locks me in the cell. And it's so funny because later on, he comes with like an extra plate. And he's like, "Hey," he's like, "I Googled you." He's like, "Man, you're the real deal." I was like, "Well, you seen the video of the tire?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, you're on Google." And I was like, "Oh, that's not." He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here when we only have 6 months?" And he's like, "Since you turned 40, your level dropped a level. And when I got out last time, I had done the drug program in the feds, so that dropped me some more levels too on security." he's like, you shouldn't be here. You should be at a minimum. And I was like, well, you know, what can I? He's like, I'm gonna talk to the counselor tomorrow. And he ended up getting me out of there. You know what I mean? Time frame, I really can't remember. I want to say a month. I want to say 3 weeks. Um, I was there for a little bit. Um, Next thing you know, I'm on a bus. This is the first time I'm making it to a low. I always tell people, I'm not racist or anything, but this is the first time I've seen so many white people in one prison. Like, there was a lot. And it was so funny because I get off the bus and it's like they have grass. I see dudes out there playing basketball and bocce, and I was like, man, this is like a college campus. They had a whole weight pile. Like they had leg press. They had dumbbells that went all the way to 100. So I got so excited. I just went and dropped off my bag and I just went straight to the yard to work out. You know, I didn't even settle in or nothing because like I was like, man, I could do 20 years here. You know, that was my mentality.
All right. So you said you only had to do what, 6 months? You didn't have to do too much time for parole violation. Federal, you was in federal prison, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you come home, and before you went home the first time, you said you were trying to change, but you were lying to yourself. I'm assuming you didn't lie to yourself this time.
I came home, and this is on this yard is where Wrong to Strong, came about because I still have the notebooks where I took all the notes of all the names of what I thought I was going to use. When I came home, I started planning, and I barely know how to read and write, so like I had to it was a little tough for me, but I sat there on my little desk, and for those whole 6 months, I hung around with everybody that could give me information about LLCs, nonprofits, how to buy and sell, houses that the bank had foreclosed on, just everything, man. I turned into a sponge those 6 months. I was working out every day. I had my little crew with me that we just, it was cool to go out there because that camaraderie of working out with inmates is very different from the gym, camaraderie. You eat, you breathe, you shower with these guys, everything. So it's like a little unit. And, it was cool, man, for those 6 months working out, getting ready. And one day I was walking the yard with my guys because we used to walk for hours just talking. And I was like, and my guy was like, I like the Wrong to Strong, how it sounds. And I was like, I do too. I was wrong, but now I'm strong. And he's like, fool, you ain't strong. and then I just started, I went with it. I was like, Wrong to Strong, Wrong to Strong, wrong. And I started, the last couple of days, everybody was like, he's going to get out and kill somebody. I was out there running with my steel-toe boots and working out and I just had the whole mentality of Wrong to Strong, I came home in 2017. I still didn't know how I was going to change. I still knew that I was damaged. So I Googled how to change. And it said college courses. So I went and I signed up for a college course.
What college course did you take?
So I get there and I told the lady my whole story. I was like, so I just got out of prison. My wife hates that. She's like, why does all your stories always have to be like in prison or I just got out of prison? And I was like, well, that's my whole life. It's like, so I tell the lady I just got out. She's like, you should take this class right here. It'll be good for you. And I looked at her and I was like, who takes this class? It was criminal justice. She's like cops, city workers, but and I was like, I don't think I want to be sitting next to a cop right now. And I still had that mentality, I hated the police, right. So I don't know, man. I felt something in my heart, and I always think that this is where like God really started working in my heart. You know, He started making things happen, and I just told the lady sign me up. So she signed me up, and I'll never forget the first day. I got there early because I wanted to scare the teacher. So, you know, I wanted to scare him like nicely, not bad, just like nice scare, and just tell him not to pick me to read, you know, because I've always had a trauma with that as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I get there and I tell him, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to sit in front, but don't pick me. I'm here to learn, just don't pick me. I didn't know this guy had been a cop for 30 years. and
he was not intimidated.
And he was married to a little 5x5 Mexican lady, you know what I mean? So it's like Chicana from the hood, you know?
He was not intimidated.
He was not intimidated, man. And, you know, it's so funny because, like, he's like my best friend now.
That's
awesome. He's the guy that disciples me.
Wow.
You know, I graduated the class, and he tried to talk to me about God, and I just wasn't hearing it. I really didn't have nothing to say to him. You know, I was very mad about everything that happened to me, and I carried that anger with me, like constantly, every day. Every day I was trying to fight somebody or chasing somebody down in my car.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I was in bad relationships, and he kind of just stood close to me, you know, calling me, checking up on me, and one relationship to another, and one day, my wife walks into the gym. It was 2019. Was it 2019?
Hey, you're gonna get in trouble here.
You're definitely gonna get in trouble.
Was it 2019 when you started at the gym? Yeah, 2019. She knows that my head's not right.
Right.
Your memory's a little skewed.
So she started there, and she became my friend because, like, she knew, like, how full of crap I was. Like, I couldn't fool her for some reason. And she always got under my skin because, like, she would be like, I heard you talking to your clients. And she's like, and she would just, like, clown on me, but in a nice way. And I started, like, really liking her as a friend. She became, like, my wingman.
Right.
So then I started, you know, sharing stuff with her that I had really never shared with people before. And I just started getting, like, close to her. And one day I got up in the morning and I sat down and told her, and I was like, well, I know that I've never been in love with nobody because, like, I would be in and out of relationships like underwears. And I was like, I think I love her. And I grabbed my phone and I was like, all right, I'm going to text her. And I was like, I think I love you. And I forgot what she asked me. If it was like love of a friend or love like, and I was like, no, like I love you. And she was like, I love you too. I was like, well, do you want to be my girlfriend? It's like, I felt like such a little kid because I had never really.
You're like, I don't know how this works.
I really had never like cared to guess about somebody, even though I didn't know really at that point. I still didn't know really what love was.
Right. You're still learning.
Or care or nothing, empathy, nothing. I didn't know nothing of that. I just knew that she made me feel like I had diarrhea when she was around me. Like my stomach, how I felt.
That's very descriptive right there. That's real love. If you got diarrhea around somebody,
not butterflies, diarrhea in the stomach.
Love. You know, that's the real stuff.
It was weird.
That's the good stuff. Nah, that's amazing.
You know, we move in together, and she finds out how really crazy I am. You know, at this point in my life, bro, I'm only sleeping maybe about 2 hours, if I'm lucky. And I'm still getting up, working all day, training, doing all that stuff. So like I'm burning the candle on both ends, like like crazy. My paranoia is through the window. Um, I would get up at night and check the whole house, room from room, the attic. I would hear noises. Uh, and since my ears, my nose, my receptors are like so high, I guess from being in prison. My wife says that she hates it because I notice everything, I smell everything. I call it like my spider senses.
Hey, JC. So right here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna end it right here. All right,
Okay.
because what's going on is I want to get into that everything that you're talking about once you got out of prison, once you got somebody that you love, that first time you experienced love, and all the trauma that you had in
To
prison.
unpack.
You know, that you had to unpack. And so we want to hear about that. So this is
And
this
and
is
you're
our-
also doing some amazing things outside of prison
Yeah,
with
so we wanna
different
hear about
programs
all
you're
of that.
doing. So we definitely want to have you back on, and we want to talk about or celebrate the stuff you're doing post P Chronicles. You
now we
okay
get
with
into
that?
post P.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we're gonna have another part 2. We're gonna have a part 2. Stay tuned once again.
I'm Will,
And I'm Steven.
and this is the Post P Chronicles.